I started thinking about when it all began. It wasn't the day they escorted me out of my own lab. It wasn't even the day I watched a junior executive fumble through my slide deck on a shareholder call. Number It started weeks before that. In silence, in small omissions, in doors quietly closing behind my back. I still remember the morning the email came, just a calendar invite. Meeting with CEO, conference room A3. No subject line, no context. I stared at it long enough to hear my coffee go cold. Inside the room, it was just her, Marlene Fay, 40, sleek, and utterly unreadable. She didn't shake my hand. "You're being rotated off the neurogenesis initiative," she said, like she was informing me of a flight delay. "We need to reallocate leadership bandwidth." My name wasn't even on the whiteboard behind her anymore. I didn't speak. I couldn't. 21 years. That was how long I'd led that program. We were months from a clinical prototype, and now it was reallocated. I walked back to my office like someone else was moving my legs. My keycard buzzed red. A janitor watched me try again. "She told facilities already," he mumbled. "Sorry, Doc." That night, I sat in my car across from the building, lights still on, security pacing the front doors. I kept waiting for some kind of call, an explanation, a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. At home, I paced through the rooms like I was missing something. I opened old notebooks. I checked the server, access revoked. I looked through contracts, emails, funding memos, and then I saw it. Clause 14.7. Inventions made solely by the employee outside of company time and without use of company resources shall remain the sole property of the employee. I stared at those words until they burned. Marlene wasn't just stealing my project, she was freezing it, delaying just long enough for my ownership rights to dissolve, or for someone else to file first. That's when I felt the first shift in me, not rage, not panic, strategy. I opened a blank document. No logos, no NDA banners. Just me and my idea. If they wanted a ghost, I'd give them one. But not the kind they could bury. On Thursday, I drove back to the building. Not to go in, just to watch. From across the street in the cafe I never used to have time for, I could see the lab windows glowing behind tinted glass. My lab, my team. But there was a new nameplate on the door. Dr. Jen Lemoyne. She used to be my research assistant. Now she was leading the initiative I built. I watched her pace during calls, make notes on the glass wall, gesture like I used to. A mirror in better lighting. She looked like she belonged. My phone buzzed. A message from HR. Reminder, exit interview paperwork due EOD. I deleted it. Inside the cafe, a pair of interns in company lanyards laughed over slides. I leaned in, listening. Marlene said it's a repositioning phase, that Dr. R. One of them hesitated, glancing at me. Wasn't aligned with the next-gen model. Next-gen model. I sipped burnt coffee and tasted metal. Back home, I opened my personal laptop. It felt exposed, like using a candle in a server room. I started drafting, not slides, not grant proposals, patent forms. I listed the compound chain, the one I'd refined in my off hours after the company paused funding, the mechanism, the sequence logic, the off-label potential that hadn't been approved for internal trials yet. I paused. Was it enough? Was it mine? I pulled out an old notebook from the top shelf. The binding cracked like an old rib cage. Handwritten notes from a December vacation. I'd worked on the compound structure in a cabin with no Wi-Fi. I remembered the fire, the snow, the way I used pine ash in the modeling. Date, December 27th, before the company even acknowledged the compound, clause 14.7. Still, I hesitated. I wasn't a rebel. I was a scientist. Loyalty was built into my bones. I opened LinkedIn. Jen had updated her title. Director Neurogenesis Initiative, ARX Biogen. She hadn't called, not once, not a sorry, not a "they made me." I stared at her photo, her smile, the caption, "Proud to lead the future of neurotherapeutics." Was that all it took? A corner office and press exposure? I shut the laptop. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then voicemail. "Doctor, Rowan, this is attorney Sam Kravis. A mutual contact passed along your situation. If you're exploring IP protections, I can advise. No fee for initial consult." I replayed it twice. Sam Kravis. The name echoed from a biotech conference years ago. He'd dismantled a Fortune 500 acquisition with one slide deck and 3 lines of fine print. I didn't call back. Not that night. But I saved the number. Somewhere between fear and fury, a new thought crept in. What if I'm not the one being watched? What if finally they're watching me? I met Sam Kravis in a quiet bar near the courthouse. Not the kind of place where biotech deals happened, which, I assumed, was exactly why he picked it. He wore no tie, drank espresso at 6 p.m., and listened like a priest who'd heard worse. I handed him the notebook, the one from the cabin. He flipped through the pages with deliberate calm, eyes scanning dates, sketches, annotations. "It's clean," he said. "You didn't use their equipment, didn't access internal data, didn't get paid for this phase." I nodded. "And you have witnesses?" "My wife, she was there. She thought I was insane for working on molecules next to a fireplace." He smirked. Insanity makes great court exhibits. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Then he leaned in. "But if you're serious about protecting it, you need to act before they go public. Once their launch hits the news wire, their version becomes the narrative. You need a patent on record." I hesitated. "Won't they fight it?" "They'll try. But if you file preemptively, you control the timeline. You force their lawyers into reaction mode." I stared at the glass behind the bar. My reflection looked older, meaner. "What happens to Jen?" I asked. "If this explodes?" Sam didn't blink. She made her choice. That night I drafted the provisional patent. No logos, no lab addresses, just my name and the compound I'd built in silence. I submitted it at 2:14 a.m. My hand hovered before clicking confirm. Then I thought of the last meeting I had with Jen. We were in the lab, late, alone. She looked tired but lit up when we discussed trials. "They'll never let this pass phase 2, she said. "Not unless someone pushes." "I will," I promised. She smiled. "That's why I stayed. You push." Now she was the one pushing, just not for me. 3 days later, I attended a biotech symposium under a different name. I wore glasses, a beard, sat in the back row. ARX Biogen had a panel. Marlene led it. Jen sat to her left. They called it Cognitive Restoration, Next Frontier. When they unveiled the prototype, a drug derived from a modified version of my compound, the room erupted in applause. Marlene smiled. Jen nodded. Neither mentioned my name, but I saw it. Slide 14, in the lower corner in small gray text, derived via modified synthesis from 47B-delta prototype. My prototype. My label. They hadn't even bothered to rename it. Back home, I sent one email. To Jen. Subject line, "You left the tag. No body. Just that." She didn't reply. But the next morning, Sam called. "They've scheduled a shareholder announcement next week. You want to ruin it?" I didn't answer right away. Then I smiled, not out of joy, but out of something colder. Let's time the release. The press release hit at 9 a.m. ARX Biogen declared a major breakthrough in neuroregenerative therapy. Their phrasing was surgical. A revolutionary compound enabling accelerated cognitive repair in post-traumatic patients, developed exclusively by ARX's in-house research team. Exclusively. At 9:03, Sam published our patent. It took less than 10 minutes for the tremors to begin. By 9:14, 2 biotech blogs picked it up. By 9:26, an analyst tweeted the filing, tagging ARX. By 9:48, the company's stock dipped 3.4%. I didn't open it. I just stared at it, while the world outside my window kept moving like nothing had changed. At 11 o'clock, Jen called. I almost didn't answer. She didn't waste time. Why didn't you talk to me first? Her voice was quiet, sharp around the edges. I did, I said, the day you didn't look me in the eye. She sighed. You blindsided the board. This could cost jobs. It already cost mine. Rowan, they're preparing to respond. You don't understand what you've done. I understand perfectly. She was silent for a beat. Then lower. They're calling you unstable. That you took proprietary work and twisted it. That you're bitter. I laughed, short and empty. Did you tell them about the cabin? About the ash models? About how you helped refine the vector on your weekends when we thought no one would care? You filed under your name, she whispered. You made me collateral. Don't act surprised, Jen. You knew what they were doing. You just hoped I'd lie down and let them. I was surviving, she hissed. You were too proud to adapt. I almost said her name, but I hung up instead. That night, the silence in my apartment was absolute. Even the refrigerator stopped humming. I opened a bottle I'd been saving since the Phase 1 trials, back when we believed we were changing the world. I poured a glass, then threw it, hard, against the kitchen wall. Glass exploded. Wine bled down white tile like a surgical wound. I sank to the floor, surrounded by shards of my own making. My hands shook. My breath stuttered. They were going to erase me. Again, this wasn't victory. It was a trigger. I crawled to the couch, lay on the floor like I used to after lab shifts, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a thought to save me. One came. Not a thought. A memory. Marlene, in her first week touring the lab, she smiled too wide. This place is a cost center, she said. Let's turn it into a growth engine. She never cared about the science, only the numbers, only the press. I'd built a legacy. She saw a product line. That night I didn't sleep. At 4 a.m., I opened my old files. Not lab reports, emails, memos, budget meetings, all the places where Marlene overruled safety protocols to accelerate trials. All the corners she shaved to get us to Phase 2 before funding ran dry. I started tagging documents. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. They didn't just steal my work. They endangered lives to get there. And now I had the receipts. At 6:42 a.m., I uploaded the first batch to an encrypted drive, labeled it for review, sent the link to Sam with a single line. They cut corners. I can prove it. By 8 o'clock, he called. These are internal safety waivers, he said. Signed off without trial board review. 3 patients dropped out after injection. No follow-up, no audit. Jesus, Rowan. I warned them back then. They called it acceptable deviation. I could hear him pacing. This isn't about IP anymore. This is regulatory breach, whistleblower territory. I don't want money, Sam. I want a firewall between people like her and science like this. Then we go bigger, he said. We bring in the Office of Research Integrity. I hesitated. I have one condition. What? My name stays off it, for now. Why? Because I'm not done yet. That afternoon, I visited someone I hadn't seen in 12 years. Dr. Amir Quinto, my first lab mentor, now head of a nonprofit clinical oversight group. He opened the door to his modest office and stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. You disappeared, he said. I was working. That's what people say when they're being buried. We sat. I handed him a tablet. He scrolled. His expression changed. This isn't oversight, this is fraud. I nodded. They're rushing to full trials next month. If this hits shelves with these protocols... He put the tablet down. You want me to expose it? Number, I want you to protect what comes next. I'm filing an independent application. New structure, clean trials, real oversight. He raised an eyebrow. You still have backers? Not yet. Then you'll need allies. He stood, walked to a filing cabinet, pulled a dusty folder, handed it over. Contacts. Labs not tied to corporate grants. Old schoolers. People who still believe data comes first. I held the folder like a lifeline. Why help me? He shrugged. Because you were always the hard-headed one, and sometimes the hard-headed save the rest of us. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by printouts, lists, timelines. The same surface where I used to write grant proposals, where my daughter once spilled orange juice over my laptop and cried for an hour thinking she ruined my career. Now it was a war table. I started making calls, reaching out to researchers, lab managers, anonymous reviewers. Some remembered me, some didn't. One said, "Didn't ARX just launch your drug?" "No," I said. "They launched a weapon dressed as medicine." Silence. Then, "What do you need?" By midnight, I had 2 labs offering shadow trials, 3 researchers willing to replicate the synthesis, 1 ethics board contact asking for an off-the-record look. Sam texted, "Ori accepted the file. They're opening an inquiry." I didn't smile. I just wrote 1 word on a post-it and stuck it on my wall. Truth. Not revenge, not redemption. Just the truth. In daylight, not boardrooms. And I would drag it there if I had to. 2 weeks later, I walked into a biotech networking gala, under my own name. The room was white linen, soft jazz, and brittle smiles. Half the people didn't recognize me. The other half pretended not to, until I reached the bar. "Dr. Rowan?" I turned. A man in his 30s, sharp suit, ARX lapel pin. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, grinning without warmth. I like champagne and hypocrisy in equal measure. His grin cracked. Lot of rumors flying. "Some of them true," I said, sipping. "Some not loud enough yet." I left him blinking and walked toward the far end, where Amir stood near a knot of older scientists. He gave me a brief nod. No smiles. We didn't need them. Nearby, a woman stepped away from the crowd. Dr. Olivia Shaw, head of a private lab in Vermont, independent, rigid about ethics. She glanced at me. "Your shadow protocol held up. My team's halfway through replication." "And?" "It works," I exhaled. "But if you want it published, we'll need to show transparency. No hidden hands." "I'll put my name on it," I said, "but not alone." She raised an eyebrow. "Amir, the 2 lead chemists, even Jen if she turns." Shaw studied me. "You're trying to rewrite authorship history." "I'm trying to get the science back on track." She nodded, once. "Then I'll back it." The next morning, we drove to a secured trial site. Shaw's team was already prepping samples. I watched behind glass as cleanroom techs ran simulations. In a quiet side room, Amir laid out a draft timeline. 5 weeks to full validation, 8 to peer review. "ARX will know by week 3, he said. "They'll try to bury it. Let them try." He pointed to the monitor, side-by-side data sets. "Your compound, and theirs. One's stable, one's volatile." "They went with the volatile one because it metabolizes faster," I said. "Looks more impressive on paper." "And shortens the trial by 6 weeks. Investors love that." I stared through the glass, watching science happen the right way. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, again. I answered. A pause. Then Jen's voice. "They're planning a press assault. Friday." "What kind?" "They'll leak behavioral instability. Say you sabotaged phase 2. that you were emotionally compromised. I didn't answer. Rowan, I know I don't deserve anything, but if this gets ugly, I'll testify. I kept records, emails, meetings. Why? Because you weren't wrong, she said, just early. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the city, lights flickering like neural signals. I had no corner office, no lab badge, but I had something better, a network, a plan, and finally, a platform not owned by people who measured value in quarterly growth charts. They wanted a story? I'd give them one. But mine would be true. The press conference was set for 10 a.m. ARX Biogen had rented out an entire floor of a downtown hotel, cameras, shareholders, even a live stream. Their strategy was obvious: drown the patent scandal in noise, reframe the narrative, and turn me into a footnote. At 9:32, I walked into the lobby. No disguise, no allies beside me. A man in a black suit approached. Security. You're not cleared. I'm not here to go up, I said. I'm here to watch. He paused, then stepped aside. In the crowd, I spotted Sam leaning against a marble column, scrolling his phone. He looked up, nodded once. They're sticking to the script, he murmured. Calling you unstable, jealous, outdated. I smiled. Good. Means they're afraid. At 9:57, the doors opened. People flooded into the ballroom. I stayed behind, just within view of the projector screens outside. Marlene took the stage like a politician. Calm, measured. Her blazer shimmered subtly under the lights. Today, she said, we move beyond the noise. She spoke of breakthroughs, trials, innovation, then came the pivot. Recently, misleading patent claims were filed by a former employee, an individual who no longer reflects the values or vision of ARX Biogen. I leaned closer to the monitor. His behavior has raised serious questions, she continued, about stability, about integrity. We regret the distraction. Then the screen behind her flashed, graphs, charts, compound breakdowns, but something else blinked on the lower right corner. An alert. Update. Office of Research Integrity opens inquiry into ARX Biogen trial procedures. I saw it live. Marlene saw it half a second later. Her eyes darted. The room stirred. Then another alert. A tweet from Shah's lab. Independent replication confirms compound synthesis, safety, and efficacy. Original inventor listed. Peer review pending. And then one more. Sam whispered, Here it comes. A link. Public. The full trial files, protocol breaches, email chains, signatures, everything. Marlene froze. Someone in the room stood up. Are these documents real? She tried to recover. We haven't had time to verify. A voice from the back, Jen's voice. I have. They're real. I was there. Gasps. People turned. Cameras followed. Jen stepped into the light, pale, composed, holding a folder. I kept everything, she said. This company compromised protocols to meet investor timelines and silenced anyone who objected. Security moved, but it was too late. The live stream was rolling. The world was watching. I stepped outside into the light. Didn't wait for applause. Didn't speak to press. I just walked, past the hotel, past the noise. The story wasn't over, but mine no longer needed an audience. 2 months later, I stood in a new lab. No logo on the door, just glass, steel, and silence. A small team worked behind me, hand-picked, unfunded, uncompromised. On the wall hung a single frame, the original sketch of the compound, smudged, burnt at one edge. I didn't give interviews, I didn't sue, but every grant now carried my clause, autonomy or nothing. Outside, the industry kept spinning. Inside, we were rebuilding it, molecule by molecule. Jen visited once, left without speaking. But I saw her pause at the door. She knew.